Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about how people get into the wine business. So there's really two major ways people get into the wine business. One is via hospitality. The other one is a previous career and then a late career change. And then sometimes, with me in particular, those things can both happen. Actually, I would say most of the time those things both happen. So let's start with hospitality. So you graduate high school. Some people have already gotten restaurant jobs before that, but how it worked for me and how it works for a lot of people is you graduate high school. Maybe you start going to community college. Maybe you start going to a traditional college. Maybe you don't go to any college at all. You have to get a job, whether your parents ask you to, whether you move out, whether you are forced to move out, whatever the circumstances be. You have to make money, okay? And you ask your friends who already have jobs. Now, your friend might work at a candy store. One friend might work at the grocery store. Another friend might work at Blockbuster. Not to age myself, but or Little Caesars, or fast food or something. I don't know. Your friends do something different, but you have that one friend who works as a waiter or a busboy, and he makes like three times minimum wage. All your friends are still making minimum wage. And then your buddy's like, "Well, I'm a busboy and I make minimum wage," which when I was a younger man, minimum wage I think was like 7.25 in the great state of California. Um, but I digress. You have a friend who makes considerably more than that as a busboy, not in a really nice restaurant, but just an average restaurant. And every hour he might be making an additional $7 or $8. So, simple kid math, that's double what my friends are making, and the shifts are usually shorter as well. So, that's a big triple win. So, I went ahead and I got a job working at a restaurant, and how you get to the wine business is you will level up in the restaurant business. So if you're coming from hospitality, you'll start in a hotel, you'll start at maybe a wine shop, or you'll start at most likely a restaurant, or a bar. You'll start kind of at the lower end, entry level job, and then if you're lucky, or you're like me, you're really lucky and you level up really fast, and your second job is working for a celebrity chef. Um, you'll level up fast and you'll start to make a lot of money, and then you're in your early 20s and you've dropped out of community college by now because you're making like $400 on a good busy night. And man, your friends, in the early 2010s, that was a lot of money. I mean, it still is for a lot of people a lot of money. And I have a ton of friends 15 years later who have graduated college, are in a ton of debt, and never really got a real job anyways. That's 2026 for you. But I digress. Um, Young people will typically come in through the restaurant business. Uh, you'll level up and you'll work at a nicer place. You'll work at a place that has a nice wine list. When I first started, there were no nice wine lists. My first job was a major competitor to Olive Garden. It was Buca de Beppo and Universal Studios City Walk. I hated it. It was terrible. I was a busboy. I was addicted to drugs at the time because my job was so unnervingly easy and physically dependent. I don't want to talk about it too much, but it was not a good time. I hated it, but it paid me really well, and I could go do all the things I wanted to do with my friends, and go to shows and eat burritos and ride my bike around and get high with my friends and mess around. But you're going to do that for 5, 6, 7 years. And then at some point, you are going to get tired. You are going to look at yourself in the mirror. Luckily, I mean, hopefully it's earlier rather than later, but you're going to look at yourself in the mirror and you're going to say, my God, I've been, you know, on a treadmill for 5, 6, 7 years, and I want to do something better with my life. So you think long and hard. You might, like me, save 10,000 USD, work two jobs, crank out some money, and then you might move to somewhere like Guam in the middle of the South Pacific, and you might bum it out there for like 4 months, um, and just think about what you want to do with your life. And that's what I did. And I watched a stupid documentary called Psalm. Yes, yep. That's the origin story. I know it's super, super interesting. You watch a movie like Psalm, and you get this thought in your head that says, hey man, I have 7 years worth of working at really high end establishments in the with wine, and I can pivot my career from the restaurant business if I work hard and make a plan, pivot my career from the restaurant business into the wine business. And that's actually exactly what I did. And, I think a lot of us have had that exact experience. So they started in the restaurant business. They made some good money when they were young. Good money turned into average money. Average money turned into not good money. And then you wanted a real job. You're a single guy. You're in your late 20s, and girls are starting to think that working as a waiter or a sommelier, working in a restaurant, is not a real career. And I really don't want to speak on that. I felt a lot of pressure with that in my personal life. But I understand why some people might say that. However, in 2026, because of how finances work and how tips and 20% is always going to be 20%, it's not a dollar figure. Some of my friends that are waiting tables are somming still at 30, they're in the early 30s or mid 30s. They're doing really well. They're making over six figures a year, waiting tables or somming tables. So, for working 6-7 hours a day, 5 days a week, pardon me, that's not a bad life. You get a lot of free time. Yeah, your schedule is a little weird. It's a little wacky, but it is what it is. That's the first way people get into wine. So you'll start at a restaurant, you'll level up, you have to level up. So the people that don't level up, they're going to stay at the bottom forever. They don't know what they don't know. If you don't know much, you can't do much. And that's the truth of our business. So, the second kind of people, there's only two. The second kind of people came from a completely different background. I work with a guy named Jeremy who I absolutely love. He's super cool. He was a lobbyist in Washington, D.C. for like 25 years. One of my other old buddies that I used to work with, he was in finance for like 15 years. Spent the first 15 years of his life in finance right out of college. Made a ton of money in New York. And then retired early with his wife. They came out here to Napa Valley, California, and really intelligent guy, really hardworking guy. But the overlying thing here is there's two levels of this. So number one, first level is you have to have worked in a bougie job at some point. So these are people that had a lot of disposable income. Came out of college making six figures and then got made partner or whatever at their law firm, then started making, $250,000 plus a year and had a lot of time and disposable income and ability to go on vacations. And they fell in love with wine because their other douchey friends are also into wine. And it started off as a pissing contest, but then you actually fell in love with something. And it's a beautiful thing to fall in love with wine. And when you work in this career, you will fall in and out of love with wine. And a big reason I've started this channel is so that I can hopefully fall back into love with wine. And I don't want to, go in and out of that. But when you start sitting for exams and stuff, it gets really hard. So you have to have made a lot of money. You got into wine, and you got into wine as a hobby and as an art form. And you love art, and you see wine as, this really beautiful thing, and you don't have the hatred for people and for service that a lot of us people that come from the hospitality background do. So you guys actually end up doing pretty well and are relatively well put together human beings. And then there's some friction because you have two totally different humans in the same exact room. And then the other thing with having that second group of people that came into the wine business via just love and passion and consumption is that when you have a direct-to-consumer sales team in Napa Valley, like, just your normal hosts at Beringer Winery, right? You have people who are local yokel Napa people, which I guess that would be the third distinction. The third distinction is the local yokel Napa people. And those people are pretty tough. Those are people that are born and raised here. They have no real formal education in wine, but they just grew up here. So they know enough about the town to talk about it, and they can just learn the story of the winery that they're working at. And they oftentimes, let's be real, have like an IQ between 85 and 95. So below average, slightly below average, to kind of sometimes noticeably below average. But you'd be surprised how hard it is to find good talent in this town. But yeah, I guess that would be the third person. But you have those three people, and how do you get into the wine business? So usually you will study wine professionally. Okay, whether you're in a restaurant, whether you're working in finance, whether you're a local Napa person, you're going to be like, okay, if I want to get a job in this business and I want to have a resume that is going to get picked up, especially at a higher end winery, because the difference between low end wineries and high end wineries are like the difference between a 3 Michelin star restaurant like the French Laundry versus Applebee's, right? So you have the Applebee's tier, or let's just, for my whatever, you have the Buca de Beppo people who are just, knuckleheads. And then you have full-blown seasoned professionals who are treating this like an art form and are very high caliber, very intelligent human beings working at a very high level. So two completely different groups of people, and you will work with people that are all up and down this spectrum. I don't know where I fit on that spectrum. I just know I'm not on the LGBTQIA plus spectrum. Got him. But you're going to have to get some education. So you have two routes. You have the WSET, Wine and Spirits Education Trust, or the more traditional for our service people, Court of Master Sommeliers. Or you can be an absolute psycho like myself and have both accreditations. And you'll have other stuff like the CSW, and you'll have all these different little courses. Oh, I'm a Champagne Masterclass from the Napa Valley Wine Academy. You can do all that if you want to, but you'll take courses in either one of those and you'll level up. And basically, as you go from level 1 to level 2 to level 3 to level 4, you get your advanced stuff. Maybe you'll even sit for masters one day, like myself and other degenerates. And yeah, you'll study a little bit, and then you'll make your way out here. You'll get your exams, and you'll pass your exams, and then you'll get some gusto, and you'll move your way out here. And you'll jump on winebusiness.com, and then you're going to start looking at all the jobs. You should probably have been doing that a month ago before you got your results. You should have been doing it for the last year and looking what's out there and looking what salaries are out there. Salaries are drastically different in this business, you guys. Just like someone who works at Applebee's might not make enough to even survive in a small studio apartment. Somebody at a high-end Michelin tier restaurant will be making a lot of money and driving a Tesla around. That's just the way the cookie crumbles in our business. There's a huge divide in human beings and quality of outcome in this business. So let's keep the ball rolling. You'll get some studying under your belt, and you'll start to become calm, cool, and confident. You might even, like me, decide to uproot your life and just move to Napa Valley and make it happen. That's what I did. And I don't even think I barely had any money when I did that. I think, oh no, I got off a contract on a cruise ship. So I did have some money, actually. I had, I don't know, maybe $15,000 stacked up when I moved here in 2019, like 10 weeks before COVID. But yeah, you'll move out here and you'll start just interviewing places, and you'd be surprised, man. There's 550 bonded wineries in the Napa Valley. So if you want to come out here and you want to make it happen, you totally can. I watched my friend Jeremy, very intelligent guy, very hardworking guy, high caliber dude, just a guy who fires on all cylinders. But he kind of settled for less, and he kind of settled for these shitty jobs, and he's worked for a couple middle of the road producers, but then he ended up at Mondavi and ended up being treated like somebody who works at Applebee's. He ended up being treated like somebody who's a minimum wage slave, and it's taken a toll on him, and the goal in our business is to work at the highest level. Okay, actually, funny enough, pro tip here. The goal in our business is to work at the middle higher end of the realm. So the really high end stuff actually doesn't pay shit for salespeople, for direct to consumer salespeople. And we'll talk about that later. But you do want to make sure you are there's 4 streams of revenue in our business. You have your hourly wage, you have your commission, you have a tip line, and then you have allocation or club member goals. So you can make money through all those ways, and a really high-end salesperson will get all 4 of those things, and they will do really well, and they will maximize all 4 of those things. You know, if you are doing that well, my previous job when I was 29 years old, I got a new job for Farniente Family of Wines as their portfolio ambassador. I went from making $70,000 a year at Chapelet, a really high quality winery that just did not pay well. It was really high end winery, really great wines. You got double 100-point scores on our Pritchard Hill 2016. Amazing family to work for, but we didn't make any money there. We just didn't. Those commission structures were not there for us. Fast forward to working at Farniente, I went from making $70,000 a year to making $170,000 a year at 29 years old. And this is before the economy really started. We went into this soft recession that we're in right now. So that 170 took me far, man. It really did. I balled out for a number of years. But I digress. You can make really good money in this business, and the people in the second half of the group, the people that had a career before, they're sitting pretty. They have their investment portfolios. They're very conservative. They bought a nice home that's definitely appreciating because it's in a really rich area of California, and they're just laying low. They might make $120,000 a year at a kind of middle. Oh my God. Oh well, I kept going. They might make $120,000 a year at like a middle of the road kind of winery and just coast. That's a good life. And if you want to do that, I'll make a separate video for how to get into the wine business. Man, I'm just rambling at this point.